Are you very hungry though?
Do you not want to eat your shoe?
Friends are looking tasty though.
Surely they are edible.
No, 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 no!
Monster, monster, cooking the monster.
Cooking the Monster is proudly presented by Herbert, Matly and Kistrix.
Monster, monster, cooking the monster tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our holiday season special for the week of all your holiday celebrations. I know that you're all gathering with your families right now and thinking about the delicious things that you're going to cook for your meals, or eat, or not with your families, or with your friends who kind of are your families, or even by yourself. Regardless of how you spend, celebrate, or commiserate your holiday period, you're going to be eating food of some kind. And today, on Cooking the Monster, we're bringing you an exclusive special on the black pudding.
Now, the black pudding is a specific subtype of ooze. It has a very strong acid component, so it will require a lot of preparation, but it will also have a variety of very interesting and fascinating effects. It, first of all, consumes wood, flesh, metal, and bone, dissolving them. It will not consume stone. So if you're wanting to trap or farm these things, then
Contain them in stone.
contain them in stone.
And they can move through any hole that is 1 inch or greater. So that's actually a pretty versatile thing. You could put them in any stone or earthenware pot that has a lid and a strap that is a gap less than 1 inch thick. It's actually quite achievable for someone to carry it. And their base desires and drives are to eat. So a well-fed ooze with an intelligence of only 1 will really be quite happy to stay in one spot so long as it's being regularly fed.
And if you're unable to feed it all the time, having a stone golem around to
Oof.
take care of it.
Upper level magics, if we're all out here. I mean, a lower level adventuring party may come across an ooze and have to deal with it, but a industrious wizard who has access to level 4 spells,
Stone shape.
Stone shape, or has access to a golem workshop, might make a custom ooze storage golem. Especially if you build like a lightning spell into it, because the lightning spell causes the ooze to separate into 2 components. So you could actually manufacture them, and there is a dual purpose to this. Yes, we will talk about eating the ooze, the black pudding itself, but it's also functional as a self-contained, highly portable cooking device.
Definitely.
If you could contain that ooze in a stone vessel with no gaps of more than 1 inch, then and keep using it regularly to feed it, to cook in the acid very quickly, because it does a lot of damage. Matly, tell me about the damage this thing is doing to the
Well, it'll do bludgeoning damage, but it'll also do 4d8 of acid damage to things that it's pseudopoding or coming in contact with.
So you're assuming that if we've got a stone container and we've been feeding this thing regularly, then if you took the top off it, or perhaps had a flute coming out of the stone container, then you could just put on a hook or some metal wire, which would dissolve more slowly. Would dissolve, but more slowly.
Over time.
Or even potentially a stone rod. You could wrap meat or other vegetables around it, and then dip it very quickly in the ooze and bring it out. The ooze would feed off it a little bit. It would get some nutrients. You could give it offcuts and leftovers, which would keep it satisfied and keep it from trying to attack you or escape its situation. And you would be able to acid cook that food very quickly.
You can do we can do red meats with acid cooking. You can also do fishes as well. So you've got a whole range of meats at your disposal. So
You might have-
use.
Yeah, you might have seen this if you had sort of like some of the raw fish, which is cooked by having like lemon juice on top.
Yeah, ceviche.
Or vodka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not... You can also affect the flavor in this manner, because if you're feeding the ooze other things, then you can affect it. So if I was trying to cook like a sliver of pork in a small portable cooking device, then I could potentially just be feeding it apples
Yeah.
for most of the time as I was walking along maybe I'd find a batch of oranges or some lemons or anything. These guys eat anything.
Metals, perhaps?
Yeah.
So if you found some nice deposits of iron or gold, even if you want to get super fancy.
Some of those minerals and metals that you could be feeding it as well could actually act as a supplement, because out adventuring we might not be getting a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and getting all the nutrients that we need.
Months in the Underdark.
Exactly.
You're going to be devoid of iron, vitamin D.
Zinc. So you could be feeding it that, and you could actually be getting a supplement drink out of it too.
Speaking of drink, I mean, we are in Australia here. I don't know if you knew, but that's where Tabletop Dynasties is based. And in Australia, it's not a cold, white winter in the holiday season.
Definitely not. It's
So
very hot.
we're talking about roasting and preparing meats, but for us, we'd like something nice and cold. And I guess this is where cooking the ooze itself comes in. If you can maybe feed it for a month or so on apples or peaches. I love peaches.
Cherries.
Cherries as well.
Because it dissolve the pits as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And then snap freeze it
Yes.
and add it to a blender with a whole bunch of bases, or possibly add the bases or alkali in there first to neutralize the acids. And then you can snap freeze it, or just freeze it if you're in a cold environment, or you have access to spells or a fridge, or even grind it up with some ice. And then you can create some amazing ooze-based slushies.
Absolutely. And because you can either use lightning or any kind of slashing implement to make it split, it's a regenerating thing. You can just hit it once, it'll split, then you can have the half of it for the meal, the slushy, the whatever you want.
And I imagine with regard to oozes, because they are such an acid-based creature, if you start pumping a lot of bases into them,
It'll neutralize
neutralize the acid, but it will also cause them to be much more sluggish,
Yeah.
as it were. So you'd likely get to a point where you could possibly just eat the ooze straight without treatment if
denatured, yeah.
if you've denatured it efficiently enough.
Yeah, that'd be very fancy.
And then it
Quite
would
fancy.
actually be like a pudding, a little bit of wood.
Yeah, just a stone bowl, put some ooze in, add some bases to it, and you'd want to select the base based on flavor, obviously.
Yeah.
But then from that, you'd be able to have yourself a lovely, delicious, squirmy
Christmas
meal.
black ooze pudding.
Yeah, well, there are so many societies that covet the idea of eating something alive and the idea of it moving as it goes into your body.
One small thing to note is that you do have teeth, and so as you're biting it, it will be splitting in your mouth. Something to be aware of. So if you're having it, let it dissolve. Let it just use your molars to crush it. If
Crush
it's
it rather
frozen.
than slice it straight in half.
Yeah, and just be aware of that nature.
But is the nature of some foods. They become dangerous if you want to have them in some way, like your classic fugu. It's about the correct preparation, the correct consumption, or the cheeses that are potentially dangerous. There are still a certain number of people who die every year in Europe from consuming cheeses that are too good to live.
And obviously, there are a whole bunch of basic foods that you can't eat normally, but the addition of this acid will lead you to not just one unique culinary experience, but two. You can have two things you couldn't normally eat,
Complementing
complementing
flavors.
themselves, make them together, and you'd be able to have a unique experience.
You could do a whole menu based on it. You could do an entree, you could do a main, you could do a dessert.
Just different bases mixed in for a different
Beautiful.
effect.
But also, if you're desperate and you're in a dungeon and all they've got are oozes and zombies, you're in for a winning situation, because the black pudding and its acid treatment will kill most of the parasites and enzymes and organisms that would grow on that meat and
diseases.
cause you damage.
Yeah.
Saves you having to use the acid splash cantrip or other spells.
Yeah.
And you can just use the ooze. Well, look, I think that about covers it for us for Cooking the Monster in this holiday special. We wish you all the best for the new year and hope that you relax with or without your family, or possibly with your family in your belly. Not that we encourage the eating of sentient creatures, but we'll see you next time on Cooking the Monster.
Monster, cooking the monster tonight.